Welcome, dear Thrivers, to a Thriver TV special, which is a Thriver success story. And I am really thrilled to have Christal here with me today. She was in one of my group classes, and I was just so inspired by her story. And I really believe that a lot of people in the community could also be inspired by her story. So, hence why we have Christal with us today. So, thank you, Christal, for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Melanie.
So,
Yes, I'm
Christal, to
really
start off, can we have a brief description of your narcissistic abuse and who this person was in your life?
well, there's been several. The one that was the make or break was my husband, my ex-husband, and he was what's called a benevolent narcissist. And he was just wonderful in the beginning. And then it lasted probably for about 3 years. He was able to keep things together. And then, but there were things from the beginning, things like not being held accountable that I just didn't want to rock the boat because I was in such a good experience with him. And I just thought it would either work itself out or we were just turning a corner. And I was with him to 13 years. And then as the years went by, different things happened. I became ill one year. Income was always a problem for him. He's in and out of jobs all the time. And anytime anything like that would happen, he would become either withdrawn and just want to go talk to another friend and get with other people, or he would start taking it out on me and drinking heavily, spending a lot of money drinking and going out, wanting to go to lavish dinners and pay for everybody else just to make a splashy scene.
Mm.
He just really, in the end, there were a couple of critical incidences. One was after a party when somebody had mentioned a relationship that I had been in previously. And he drank real heavily right before he got in the car, and I didn't know it. And so on the way home, he was just driving really fast, and it was on a dark road. There were cattle on the road, and it was windy. And he was doing almost 65, 70 miles an hour
Oh,
up on a
gosh.
windy road. And I just thought I was gone. I just thought that
Terrifying.
it was very terrifying. And so the
Yeah.
next morning, I told him, I said, "Here's a book. You have to read this book." We were married at the time.
Yes.
And he cleaned up his act, cried and everything for about a year or two. But then the drinking got worse. And eventually I lost my health toward the
Wow.
end of it. But there were other critical incidences like that. And it always seemed like when we were at a party and I was getting any attention, it was a work related party.
Yeah.
And they were very excited to have me on board this new opportunity. And the minute we got in the car, he just started ripping into me and telling, derogatory and cussing. And it was pretty bad. And
Oh,
his mom,
gosh.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And what you said at the start was the lack of accountability. And that is a really big thing with somebody who doesn't have the emotional maturity or the humility. Somebody who's in arrogance, who will not be accountable for their actions. And this is a classic
hmm
thing that you do see in narcissists.
hmm
And of course, it makes it very, very unsafe for you to be in there. So, when you said like he got his act together for about a year, was
right.
he was he being accountable? Did you have, or was he just kind of behaving better? Or was he owning his stuff? Was he owning his disappointments? Did he stop blaming other people for things going wrong in his life?
No, he just took the spotlight off of me and put it on other people. He'd put it on
Yeah.
coworkers, clients, bosses.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. It was always on someone other than him. He would
Mm.
clean up his act and act better just for a short time, but then something else, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah.
He never always had it all together at once.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
always
And I think this
something.
is really key in relationship for people to understand with a narcissistic, unconscious, or immature person is they're not going to lean into you, whether it's a friendship or a work relationship or a love relationship. They're not going to lean into you with humility and cooperation and teamwork when they have problems in their life. They're going to shut down, remain arrogant, blame everybody else, probably blame you. But as you said, he backed that off for a year, but he
Mhm.
still wouldn't have been saying, well, this is where I could have done better, and this is where I could have healed, and this is where I could have grown, and actually change or have the self-reflection to actually be able to put things in place and change himself and change his life and have a better relationship with everything that was going on in his life plus you. So we might think that they're getting better, but as you said, it's only a switching of the spotlight, which is really important for everybody to understand.
Right.
So so tell me about the breakdown, your breakdown, and how bad it was before finding our beautiful community here in NARP.
Oh. Oh, it was really bad. Well, income was always a struggle because he was so unstable and he made my life unstable that there
Mm,
was, when I would try to relate with other people in a healthy way, he would interfere with that because he wanted all of my attention. And so any successful bonding that I had either with an employer, clients when I was self-employed, that got damaged. And so I
mm,
started losing my finances, the
mm,
house, uh, da- you know,
mm.
I was on a foreclosure kind of a roller coaster for a while.
Oh,
And yeah. And so
mm,
the finances were never stable. And even when he was making money, he acted like he didn't or he was hiding it. And so I always felt like
mm.
we were more broke. And so a lot of financial stress plus a
Yes,
lot of his personality stress
yes.
and the fact that I was still in a cognitive dissonant sleep state, and
Mm,
I had woken up yet. So here I was heaping all this on myself and being very negative with myself, and it broke my health. It broke my health. And when COVID came around,
mm,
I was probably pretty tired by that time already. And I had seen that my marriage was not turning around this time. And I thought, it can't keep going like this. And so in 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, I got COVID. And it was at a time when the United States, they weren't really taking care of the nurses and doctors. So I didn't want to really be admitted into the hospital. So
mm,
I waited it out until that shifted and changed to where I knew if I went in, I'd have some control over my health. But I'm a
mm.
small person and I don't weigh very much. And so I put on 60 pounds of water weight
Oh gosh.
because my body was shutting down. And my son and my daughter-in-law just said, "Mom, can we take you into this hospital?" Because it was run by some Catholic nuns and it wasn't in the like system. So I went in and they did the test and it came out that I had congestive heart failure and I had
Oh,
10% of my heart was functional and was ejecting like blood. So I had
wow.
10% of my heart and I had 60 pounds of water weight that was
Oh,
all through my legs and all through my body, and my stomach was extended. It looked like I was 7 months pregnant. So I was really sick. And those doctors were able to hone right in and get me on a track and to just save my life. I didn't have COVID at the time, but I had gotten it and recovered from it,
yeah.
but it had gone to my heart and had attacked my heart.
Oh
So
gosh.
that's the state I was at.
Yes, and trauma doesn't make dis-ease any better.
Mm-mm,
It
no.
And sometimes these are the wake-up calls in our life to say, well, emotionally, we've been strong and we're dealing with so much, and then everything can just implode. It happens to a lot of people. So, in regard to the relationship and trying to get some sanity and some peace and some safety and some of your mental and emotional stability and health, what had you been trying to do to get well? And
Oh,
how
I
had
had
that been
been
going?
I had read a lot of books on communication, thinking if I did this, then he'd do that. And
It's impossible to communicate with a
it,
narcissist healthily.
it's the most circular,
Oh,
crazy making conversation in the world. It really is.
You do. You think you're going crazy.
Yeah, so that was to no avail. Taking care of my health. I'm a gardener and I grew my own food. So I had very healthy diet, just trying to take care of myself that way. A lot of positive affirmation, reinforcement. Years ago, I did the metaphysical and have realized that that was sort of a not a very good way to go. And so
Yeah.
I was just doing a lot of inner reflection
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how I could get some balance with different programs that were out there.
And how was that going? Were you getting better? Were you getting worse? Where was what was happening?
I was just basically jogging in place is what it felt like, in treading water and feeling like I was just drowning in circumstance that I didn't feel like I had any control over, and I was getting worse instead of better.
Yeah. And the thing is too, a lot of intelligent, good-hearted, compassionate people, it's not like we haven't put in the effort in these relationships. It's not like we're not trying to find the answer or
Yeah.
to, do anything and everything we can because we're emotionally invested. It's a really big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, for people in
Yeah.
need.
Oh, for family and for yourself, where he was very good at future faking. And I mean, I just thought pretty soon all of these other things that we had planned, why will, maybe that's what's going to happen next. And I really had to, it took going through the program to actually learn how not to believe that that was just a setup to string me along, you know.
Yes. Breadcrumbing is a really big thing. And of course, we want to believe it. We really want to think, there is going to be a light at the end of this tunnel because we are
Yeah.
so invested.
Hmm.
Oh,
Looking
okay.
forward
So
to
speaking of the program, which is NARP, did you have, what kicked that off when you thought, all right, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna try this way? Did you have any reservations or resistance to the inner work? Or I'd love to hear about your journey with NARP.
with Nar. Well, I was in a really low place and I had a life vest on, which would have shocked me back to life. Get it, if I would have had a heart attack. And so when I got home from the hospital, I had 14% of my heart and a life vest on. And he told me, he looked right at me. He goes, it was really a lot nicer when you weren't here. I liked it when you were in the hospital.
Oh,
He said, you have a really dark spirit. And I just thought, wow,
oh,
that is just so far from the truth.
what a
And
betrayal.
I just was spending time alone and getting distance from him. And I saw your program on Facebook and I heard you just talking a little bit about, do you feel like, or does this sound like something? And I thought, yeah, how do you know how to say it like that? Because I sure didn't have any way to even describe it or knew for that matter that anybody
Mm,
else was going through it because
mm,
it's so personal yet it's so prevalent. And so when I heard that you had offered a program, at first I thought, well, what is going to be different about
mm,
this
mm,
than some of the other things that I had tried? And I just kept listening to you talk about things. And I thought, well, this already sounds different.
mm,
This already has sounded different. And I really wanted out. I really wanted out of the pain, really, the really just utter daily pain of that emotional abuse and that stressful situation. Didn't want to go, that I almost, died. And so I knew that I had to change something in a real big way. And it just seemed to me that, well, why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't I do this if I want changes in my life? Because it was just making sense in a way that nothing else had. And then when you said, I'm pretty confident about this and I'll give you your money back and you could make, monthly payments, I'm like, well, now I really have nothing to lose. So I had lost so much already. And I thought, I have nothing to lose. And for the first time, somebody understands, almost like you were there with me, somebody understood what I was going through. And it appeared there was a path out. And I couldn't resist that. The fact that I could actually get out of it.
I'm so pleased. And,
Yeah.
that's what we love about NARP. It's an actual solution to healing, it's not just information.
Mm-mm.
Hence why, it's helped so many people. And I love that I'm in those healings, my voice and soothing and supporting people so that you feel like you've got a spiritual sister holding you through your healing all the time because it is so
Mhm.
important.
Mhm.
Yeah. To know you're not
Yeah.
alone and you're not mental. And this happens to more people than you could ever imagine. So,
Right.
Crystal, yeah. Oh gosh, and Source is so large and in charge. You've been taken to the brink with a health wake up call, which is what happened to me too.
Mhm.
It's our
Right.
soul is saying, how loud do we need to turn up the volume for you
Yeah.
to stop choosing them and this insanity and fully turn inwards to choose yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't be alive if you didn't.
Oh, I don't know. I'd be gone. That
I
that would have killed me, I think so.
I think
I
so
wouldn't have
too.
recovered because I got out of the hospital the beginning of January, and then I found NARP January 21st.
Mm.
So it was like 3 weeks later that I saw the program, and then I was doing that, the NARP, and things started to just unpeel. And just little pieces would fall in and make sense, make sense, make sense. And then about probably a month to 2 months into it, going through those processes, a lot started to fall away. And I started really seeing things different and believing that I had a choice, believing that I could have boundaries and trying those things out because I'm very much, as a gardener, want to plant things and then try things and see how things turn out. So I would always test and see, oh, okay, so this is the way or the boundaries are supposed to work. I'm going to give that a go at work today with, customers, or I'm going to give it a go when I'm at home today and see what kind of response I get. And it just blew me away. The big change in the other people around me because I could come from it from a place of peace and not a place of demanding that other
Yes.
people did things. And
Yes.
that was a real turnaround and turning point for me. But at the same time, it was my own personal wake up call that, okay, now that I'm doing the boundaries, I also can't blame people for things anymore. And then I
Mm.
did that next great big chunk, which was probably the largest piece of the healing, which was having victim mentality.
Yes. And I was just
Woo! That
about
was
to say,
big.
reversing that finally puts you in control of the creation of your life
Mhm.
and gets you beyond those abuse programs and patterns that we were stuck in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was I would say the biggest change. I mean, the benefits have been tremendous, but as far as what has made the most change in my life, it's now walking with that understanding and awareness. And because the quantum freedom is from the DNA level,
Yeah.
it rewrote my program. So I don't
Yeah.
have to try to be different. I am completely different.
Yeah.
It's like trying to forget that you've learned English. You can't undo learning English.
Right.
Once you know it. And so now that changed in my head and it was very
Mm,
physical and I really
mm,
remember the situation going through it and the visualization going through it. And I
mm,
honestly feel like my head just parted and I could just
mm.
see all the patterns in my life and all the times that I had wondered what had happened. Why did I get this kind of a result? It was all back to that one thing. It had to do with boundaries. It had to do with victim mentality, living that.
Absolutely. And it's so beautiful with quantum freedom healing. We can access a spiritual apparatus, like defragging a computer of our DNA of these
Mhm.
problematic, painful, traumatic programs, getting rid of them, bringing in the
Yeah.
higher self source programs, which are the empowerment programs, landing them in. So it's like we literally have had an upgrade and we're just different.
We are. Yeah. Oh, I am completely different. Yeah. And
And it's
it's
pretty incredible to think it wasn't that long ago, in all that COVID era that you were, on death's door potentially.
yes.
So I want to talk about that. How fast would you say was the progress? Like if you put it into time frames, and also too, I want, within that, like share where you're at and what's going on today. How long did that take?
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, it's been at first it didn't feel like there was much movement because the cognitive dissonance was just so, I mean, I call it, I was in this trauma drama,
Oh yeah, gosh.
and
Oh
trauma
yeah.
drama. And I had to give myself not only permission, but
Mm,
also parent myself and say, you can't do that anymore. There's more to your life than what is running you in circles right now. And so
so
then
true.
yeah, at the beginning of the program, I was
Mm,
dealing with those kinds of they're not surface, but kind of
mm,
daily, how you run your life on a daily basis and who you're talking
yeah.
to and how you're talking and interacting with people.
Yes.
That I had to first work on that part of it is to let go of the need to have everything in an uproar, to live in a
Yes.
calmer state and to
Yes.
let all of that come in, settle me down, find the wisdom. And that took probably 2 months to go through that
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Once I had the awareness of the victimization and I started really working in on that, I mean, there was a lot of tears when I figured that one out. And I'm like, oh,
Oh,
look at all the time. And
for sure. And when
so
we're
then
loading up and letting go, it
uh,
can be so emotional. You're letting go of that old self that was survival and you didn't know. It was just your coping mechanisms and
mhm,
and you didn't know. And you're letting that go. And then like it's a relief and it's painful and you cry it out when you're doing the visualization and you let it go. But you make space for that healthy download to come in and anchor in.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And when that happened, it was less than 6 months because when I had that epiphany and that awakening and DNA rewriting of my soul, then things just happened in quickly for me. And I got a divorce and I came back
And how did
for
it go with him? Like, what happened there? How did
what
that
happened
go?
then? Well, there was a critical incident where I told him,
Mm,
I've got one foot this way and I've got one foot this way. And right
oh,
now my other foot's going to join and go walking out the door. And I
right.
said, this is it for you. I said, if you mess, if you screw up, that's it. Cause I'm done.
Yep,
And I let his mom and dad know what I had done, what I had said.
yep.
And then we went to my dad's funeral. And at my dad's funeral, he was all, in all of his narcissistic, benevolent glory.
Yes.
And I just thought, "You make me sick." And I thought, "This is
Yeah.
so over." But I had to kind of fake it and because I didn't want him to know because when he drank at this point in the relationship, his drinking turned violent.
Oh gosh. Yep.
And so I had called his mother and let her
Yep.
know, "If, you know,
Mm,
if he threatens me like this, I'm gonna call the
mm.
police." So she
Oh,
knew. He knew. And of course, he didn't touch a drop of liquor the whole time. He couldn't wait until it get in the car. So the divorce happened right after I came back from my dad's funeral because of the way he was behaving there, which just made me totally sick. And I went to work and I told where I was working, I said, I've got to go in and file. And I went in, I got a restraining order and I filed for
oh,
divorce.
I love this.
Yeah.
And did he try to fight back? Did he crumble? Did he try to love bomb? What did he do?
Well, he had COVID. And he was
Okay.
sick in bed with COVID. And
Okay.
the
Okay. Good
constable knocked
timing.
on the door. Yeah. Constable knocked on the door. I said,
Wow.
somebody you need to go see. He goes, no, I'm sick. Oh, yeah. You need to get up and answer the door. And
Wow.
and he acted like it was no big deal, like it was
Good.
the neighbor stopping by.
Yes.
No big deal. And he
Yeah.
goes up, can I have 15 minutes? And the
Mm.
guy said, no, you can't. And I was just telling him, I want to do this. I want to get it quick. And the divorce papers are on the way. And so it was really strange. And then within 15 minutes, he was
Mm.
gone and out of my life. And I had a restraining order to
Wow.
where he could not write. He could only write to me. He could only text because I did not want to hear his voice ever again.
See, this is what's really interesting after bullying, threatening narcissists, and we see it all the time. It happened in my life too, is when you do that inner work and you stand up and you get at that real inner standing and connection of your empowerment and your fear's gone, they just crumble into dust.
Yeah. Yeah. But he didn't do anything. And
Yeah.
so it
They
was my,
actually will acquiesce because it's the hugest insult for you to be in your empowerment out of any emotional dependency with them,
uh-huh.
and the gig is up.
Yes.
They really have to move on and get away from that. It's the hugest ego insult. You being detached in your power and no longer emotionally derailed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So did you have to separate like property with him or
Well, I own the house. I had owned the house 10
right,
years for 10 years already. So he
right.
actually moved in with me. And
So he
although
didn't
he,
try to go you for the house?
nope,
'Cause a
nope,
lot of them do.
nope. He,
Fantastic.
yeah, he had a lot of stuff there. I had a friend. He had a lot of stuff there, and he could only have a police escort to come back to the house and take it. So it took him a month to get his stuff.
That would have
Yeah.
been such an insult to him.
Oh yeah, and
Oh,
then the forms were in my name. And he wasn't paying his share because that he had agreed to in the divorce papers. He wasn't paying. So I shut his phone off.
wow.
I shut his phone off and he called me from a different phone. And I was like, oh, who is this? like I didn't know.
Wow.
We kind of battled, on stuff like that for a
Yeah.
while. And then the reason I turned his phone off is because he wouldn't give me the title to the truck that I wanted. Truck was paid for, wouldn't give me the title. So I did hardball over that, but boy, boundaries
Yeah.
the whole time, no contact.
Yeah. Love that.
All,
Love that.
yeah,
'Cause if you give an inch, they take a mile. If you try to cut a deal and keep the peace, they're gonna make mincemeat out of you. You
yeah,
just have to stand up, put the boundaries in place, lose the fear, and walk that powerful, solid line. And it's an emotional battle. It's you're in a spiritual war with these people. So the state of your inner being is king, you know,
yeah.
and you worked on that with NARP, and that's why you got the great results. I'm so happy for you. So, Crystal, tell us about your life now. What does Crystal's life and mission and soul purpose and what does that look like now? I because that's what excited me when we spoke.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all the past is the heaviness, and so when I started walking out of that and walking on my own, well, the first thing I did was I fixed up my house, and I had a friend help me with that. So I felt really good and very lifted getting all that old stuff out. So I just completely decluttered. That was a lift and
Oh,
repainted the
beautiful.
house and cleaned it up. And I have a background in real estate. So I was able to find somebody to do a lease purchase on my home. And so just in December of just this last December. Yeah. Yeah. Cause we're a lot of things have happened. A lot of things have happened really fast. I leased my house out to a family and they have horses, and that's what I had as well. And so she's happily living, and she paid me what I needed to bring my mortgage a little more current. So my mortgage is current. I'm off of that foreclosure. She pays me on time. So now I'm making my own money. I've got my mortgage covered. I've got all my expenses in the town that I lived in. all those expenses are covered by this one person. And so that my home base is now covered and cared for. And I don't have, it's not from a paycheck, it's from the house that I'd owned for 20 years. So that felt like a real success. And she called me on my birthday. That was a wonderful birthday present. So I thought that was really neat. It was a Craigslist ad that I put out there, and she
Wow.
came in from another state. So
So that
my
solution was an inspiration. You just had the inspiration, you had the idea, and
yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it worked out wonderful. And then, so of course, now I don't have a house. Where am I going to go? And my kids had asked me if I could move in with them and help them expand her business because my daughter-in-law has her own business. So I came down, and that's what I'm doing right now is living with my family and helping her
beautiful.
expand her business. And yeah. And it's pretty exciting. And I think I'm probably going to relocate again here pretty soon up to cooler weather because it's very hot in Arizona, and just putting it out there to for another job. And it came within like 2 days of putting it out there. Yeah. One job opportunity ended abruptly last Friday
Yeah.
because I put down a boundary. And
I love
then,
that. I love it.
yep. And so it was a mutual parting of ways.
Yeah.
And And I started picking up on that really right away. I'm like, nope, this isn't
Not for
working.
me.
Nope, not anymore. Not even spending any time. And then cool thing about it was I didn't ruminate about it. I didn't go over and over and over the situation in my head. I just really felt the right thing to do and went with that. And some really positive things have happened in less than a week after that. Less
Well,
than a week.
I love that. Source is
Yeah.
large and in charge. And when we've got our values and our truth and our integrity defined, and we know
Hmm.
we're a child of God, the universe, source, and we keep bringing in the light and letting go of fear, well, then we just flourish and nourish just by walking our truth and integrity
Hmm.
because the field is our dream team. We're connected to it. And that's I love that too. Like I've had a big shift in my life, something ended and something new stepped in the most amazing ways just by standing in
Yes.
integrity and being
Mhm.
willing to lose it all to get it all rather than ever, ever sell our soul out again.
Yes. Well, and my son has, he can have problems working with family, but my son, I spent a lot of time with him. I didn't have like a typical 9 to 5 job when he was growing up. So I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time with my son. And so we have a real close relationship.
Beautiful.
And when I'm working from home here and I run into something that I need a little help with that he's really good at, he's business management consultant. And so I went to him and I asked him about it. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? He's
Yeah.
like, Mom, he says, Mom, how did you do that? What? And he says, how did you, how did you change yourself so much? He says, well, the mom I've known would have never come and asked me about something like that. And I told him, I said, I did the inner healing. And then another powerful situation occurred last week. He was asking me about, what was it? He's kind of lost my train of thought for some reason. Oh, that because I didn't have any boundaries back in the day in 20s and 30s and stuff like that when I was raising him, I didn't have any boundaries and I was so in victimization.
Yeah.
He told me he thought that when I got a new job, that as soon as something happened, that I would lose that job based on past experiences that he's had.
Wow.
And he saw me not doing that. And I said, well, son, that must have been really difficult for you. And you must not have felt very secure as a child because every time I would meet somebody, they would just kind of walk all over me. And you wanted to protect me from that. And you
Oh,
didn't have any control. They said you didn't have any control and you didn't have any choice. And I said, I'm sure that must have really hurt you. And I
oh,
said, I'm really
gosh,
sorry. I think
bless
I'm,
your heart and his.
yeah. And he said, well, Mom, he went through 2 years of therapy. He says, "There's no way in the world I would have ever thought that you would say something like that to me." He goes, "I didn't even know you'd know." And I just thought, wow, how different I am now to be able to acknowledge that I know that that's what that victim mentality did, and not having boundaries, that's what it did to
Yeah.
him, because I was still so living in the dark, living in the, trauma
Mm.
drama of my life. And it really created an unstable emotional place for him. And he again asked me, he goes, "How do you know this? How did you change that about yourself?" He says, "Because that's something that's core to who you've always been." And I told him again, it's through the same healing process. You just have to trust to look, and trust to let it go,
Yeah.
and then just not be afraid that life can be easier. Because I think we get so caught up in the fight, you
Oh
know,
gosh. The defenses, our
and just
security blankets of hanging on
yeah,
to stuff. Mm.
yeah. And just getting used to fighting, getting used to having trauma, and getting used to, if you can imagine your life without that,
Mm.
and see who you are instead of that,
Mm.
and have the courage to step into that, then you really can live a good life. And things don't have to be so hard. They come much easier without a lot of toil that we're used to having to do to even be recognized for anything. So my life is
Beautifully
incredibly
expressed,
easy.
Crystal. And that's the way
Thank
it's meant
you.
to be. It's meant to
Yeah.
organically flow. We're meant to be in partnership with Source. We're meant
Mhm.
to let go and let God, Source, our higher self, guide us instead of be led by our fears and our wounds and our battles and our struggles and our repeat patterns. I am so thrilled for you, Crystal. And what I love
Yeah.
about you is just your beautiful. I can't even imagine the Crystal that you talk about, who used to be a victim, who your son was relating to, and I'm sure you can't relate to her either. Like she's not there
No.
anymore.
I told my son, I said, when that happened, I said, I don't have a lot of memories of that time frame anymore
Mm.
that I can articulate and go back, and because I used to beat myself up a lot. That was one of the big takeaways, is I bless and I accept this feeling, because I alone was oof, in there. It was not good. Very negative space in there. And now just to have a positive space in my head for myself first. And when negative things happen, it's not necessarily me that's doing it, or
Mm.
creating it. Let that bad thing just be a bad thing. And you go be a good thing.
Love
No.
that. Love that.
Yeah.
So, Crystal, it's been such a joy to have you on this interview and so that you can share your Thriver story with our beautiful, amazing community. Do you have a final word of love and love and encouragement to share with our community?
Be brave and just be willing to be open. And as you become somebody new, just give that new person a big hug,
Mm.
because she's been waiting. She's been waiting to live. And I just, at this
Mhm.
later stage in my life, I am not feeling bad that it took me this long. I'm just
Mhm.
very appreciative that I got here. Yeah. So
Beautiful
just,
message.
yeah.
Beautiful message. And the guys out there also to know we do have lots of men that work with the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Program known as NARP. We're going to have NARP, the link to NARP in the comments so that, if you feel inspired, if you've had enough of the pain, whether you're in the shocking battle and you need to get out, or whether you've got out from the narcissist, but the battle still lives on within you and you want to be free to your true self and your true life. Because that's what thriving's all about. And NARP and Quantum Freedom Healing has already delivered tens of thousands of people from over 150 different countries. Saved their life, saved their soul, and we would, and I'm sure Crystal would too, we would love you to join us.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, It's quite a beautiful community we have of people napping. It's just incredible, our Thriver tribe. So we'd love you to join in. Crystal, again, thank you, darling, for sharing your story and your love and your encouragement. And I will be seeing you around MTE.
All right. And thank you, Melanie. It's been fun. And I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, ditto. Thank you, darling. Bye bye, everybody.